Alright, we are recording for chapter 6 of The Voyage Home. Um, yeah, I'm concerned. It's starting to get kind of fun, but it's still, well, it's still got issues. So, this, the trend is not going very well here. Anyway. So it's following the crew, because, we don't have any subplots yet. Well, technically, we get them in the story in this chapter. The crew's together. They basically encounter morning rush hour. No one really pays attention to them. But they're trying to gain it, gather information. Ultimately, he sells the spectacles to get some money, and then the team split up. And we get a little bit of stuff concerning that, which the Scotty thing is funny. The Chekhov and Uhura thing, not so much. I get the whole. It's easier to have the joke in the movie about where are the nuclear vessels, where he's constantly mispronouncing it while the cop just stands there staring at them. Not quite how it goes here, but anyway. We get this with Kirk finds news machines. He glanced quickly over the headlines. I was abducted by aliens from space. Jim frowned. Had he stumbled into a first encounter of human beings with another sentient species? If so, he would have to keep his people and his ship well out of the way. But he distinctly remembered, that the first contact happened in the 21st century. It happened in the 21st century. It happened when humans left their solar system, not when another species visited Earth. And he certainly did not recall anything about abductions of humans by extraterrestrials. You would have to ask Spock if he knew for certain, but not here on a crowded street corner where their conversation could be overheard. Mainly I highlight that just because it's kind of funny that basically he found the National Enquirer, and is just, like, I don't recall it being how first contact went. I will say, though, you'd think that kind of event would be one that you would just remember a lot of the details there. That is significant enough. But it does also directly contradict what they show in the movie First Contact, which is not... That is... Hello. I don't remember if that's technically set in 21st century or not. It certainly is not set outside the solar system, though. Yep, Memory Alpha here. Yeah, into 2063, so 21st century. Okay. Just want to make sure at least that's consistent there. It also doesn't mention the Vulcans, which I could believe that's just it hadn't been decided what the species should be yet. But again, that is you'd remember that. But yeah. Next thing here though, Jim waited for the headline to dissolve into a news story. Yeah, but nothing happened. He wondered if the news machine was broken. I get the joke, but it should not be made. Because he has an understanding of paper books. Because, he was given one just a few months ago by Spock. The Tale of Two Cities, first edition, was given to him as a gift. He does collect these things. He understands printed paper. Why would he be looking at it, yes, through the window of a newsstand there, a news machine, where you put the quarter in, you open it up, pull the paper out. Why is he looking at that and not realizing that's paper, and paper doesn't change? I'm sorry, but it's just the beginning of the trilogy. He knows this, and now he's an idiot. I'm not okay with that. If it was somebody else, if it was Scotty, I could understand it. it were Chekhov, I could understand. If it was Sulu, I could understand it. Spock would know better, I believe, and Uhura, honestly, I think she would also know better, and that's just... To me, I would think Uhura, because of her communications background, well, her communication skills, that she would have a knowledge of cultures and also potentially literature. That she just seems like her vocation would already lend her to being very much a literate being, very much a literate person. So I would expect she would recognize and understand paper. Chekhov's and Sulu and Scotty, not so much. Bones would know because he I think he would know just because he also likes antiques like Kirk, or at least has a better awareness of them, I think, than the others. But we also do get Scotty later. I also highlighted this just because I found it a little funny, because he is then like, after seeing somebody use it, it's like, oh, all the books I've read talk about, boys going and yelling, extra, extra. So he's very confused. He didn't recognize this thing. But Jim wondered how anyone kept up with the news here. These headlines must be hours old. Is this kind of predicting that they had in the Federation not necessarily 24/7 news channels, but the equivalent to social media, and it being used for, well, not so much the social part, but news in that way, something that is more up to date? I do kind of wonder. But it's also, it was a nicer time in some ways. It's one of those weird things. I know this is quite an aside, but I'm old and I feel like ranting, even though I want this to be short. Because yes, it used to be you would get your news potentially once or twice a day, for normal people in my lifetime, because you would, it used to be, no, you'd actually get newspapers multiple times a day. Extra, read all that. The extra is an extra printing where it's like, hey, something's happened that we've put out another run in the middle of the day. But they also could have like a morning edition and an evening edition. In my lifetime, I don't really know if those are still a thing, having separate editions, but you'd get the newspaper in the morning, news in the evening you would get via radio or television. Okay? But that would be how you'd get it. You wouldn't get it constantly throughout the day. And in a way, that was nicer, because earlier in my life, not so much now, certainly, you had typically professionals doing the news. So it would be, for one thing, the newspapers would be much larger. They would contain far more in there. They would also contain, the articles themselves should also be better written than what you see today. And I don't even mean with the AI slop. I mean just, there is some where you read it and it's like, does this person even have a middle school education? Or just, why are they writing it in this way? There was actually something my mother was looking at, and how it's like, yeah, it describes an event one way up here, but then you go down some paragraphs, and it's like, oh no, it's this. This is what we're talking about. It's like, here's where you actually say, you wouldn't do the, not as obviously back then, not as consistently back then. And it is, you basically used to have good editors and good writers. Now, you don't have that. Not even with social media providing the news. But the advantage with social media providing the news is there tends to be a large number of people doing it. So even though you can't necessarily trust that any of the people you're looking at are good writers, or that they don't have a bias, you still have so many of them that you can't find the information yourself. So if you just see many, you can ingest it and come to your own conclusions, especially if you see across multiple biases, or if you just understand what the bias is, you can start to parse what they're actually saying. And it actually does occur to me that might be one accidental advantage to, like with Twitter having a character limit, is it forces somebody to not bury the lead. Now, true, some people will still write long things or do long threads, but it still is, it technically does compel somebody not to bury the lead. And by the way, that is L-E-D-E, not L-E-A-D. Um, it is actually a different term, and it is uh, out of news, and it like goes back quite a while as well. But no, that is, I'm pretty sure that's LED. Hang on, because there's also leading, which is a different thing as well. I think that though, no, leading is LEAD. Let me just confirm that. Uh, Unfortunately, it's spelled the same as leading. Yeah, leading refers to space between lines of text. LEADING. That I'd actually looked up a while ago because working with latex, sometimes I would see people referring to that. It's because when doing movable print typing, in order to increase the space between lines, they would put in pieces of lead, just little sheets of, well, not exactly little, but let's just say millimeter thick sheets of lead, so that you could increase the distance between lines. And because they were lead, it was you were leading it. So it's, yeah. It is funny because this came up a few days ago where it's like, there's some things where it's like, I know what you're talking about, I just don't know the jargon for it. But then there's other things where, no, I know this jargon. Why don't you know? Because you're not as weird as I am. Yeah, and then we get this. Damn, Jim said softly, they're still using money. We're going to need some. Money, Chekhov said? Well, actually, no, I'll get to Chekhov. Yeah. They didn't need to continue with the Chekhov joke here, not like this anyhow. But yeah, they're still using money as though it stopped being used. I'm just like, are they trying to talk about how in the Federation or on Earth they don't use money anymore? Except later on, there's a reference to Scotty and money. So I mean, it's that's inconsistent, and it's also inconsistent with the prior book. And in fact, both prior books. Stories. Wrath of Khan. I'm pretty sure there's reference to the Genesis Project being funded money by the Federation, and also in Search for Spock, McCoy is trying to charter a ship, and he's going to pay for it. Money again. I mean, there are references to them having and using money on Earth throughout the stories. It's just a, hey, we need this, so we're going to do that. Yeah, I feel like there could be other ways this is achieved, such as just they run out of money, and so that's why we don't have, or just Kirk doesn't really know how to manage money. So it's like, he can't pay the bill because he doesn't know what the correct amount would be. He doesn't know how to properly do that, which technically is stupid because it does say on the bills, even old ones. But yeah, it just... Yeah, anyway. Money, Chekhov said? We should have landed in Russia. There we would not need money. Never was that true. Which is interesting because I can understand the whole running joke with Chekhov being taught the various propaganda of the Soviet Union. But there's propaganda, and then there's just straight we lying to you. And I feel like this would be, oh, they didn't use money, is straight we're lying to you. And there are some people that go by, and one even muttered Pinko Kami exchange student. And Chekhov, of course, I need to still say something. In Russia, to each according to their need, from each according to their ability. We didn't need Chekhov quoting party lines. We really don't need that. We don't. But it's what he gave us. What she gave us, sorry. And it's also just to... Who decides what you need? Who decides what your ability is? In communism, Marxism, socialism, progressivism, all of those isms, also feudalism technically. It is funny that Marxism in many ways is like, yes, this is the way of the future, Marx argued. It's actually the way of the past because it very much describes feudalism. But anyway, it's somebody else that determines that. It's not the individual. So it's like, well, I need more food. It's like, no, I've decided you don't need it. but you've also decided that I need to do all this work. I don't have I'm gonna die of starvation before I can finish it. It's like, no, you have the ability. You can do that. Go do that. That's part of what's good about free trade, is that you decide what it is you need more than other things. So it's like you can decide, I like the guy who bought the newspaper. He decided that the value of that newspaper was greater than the value of whatever else he may spend the probably quarter on. It's like you have that choice because it's you are deciding your need, not somebody else. And also, again, with your ability, what is it that you are most capable of doing? You decide, not somebody else. So anyway, we do get the double dumb ass line in here, which is not too surprising, but I still wanted to note. I also do want to check this. Check my notes if there's anything here I'm missing. Alright, there's one thing here. I am not going to try to read it. I got trouble enough pronouncing English. I don't want to try pronouncing Japanese, especially when it is written in English. I don't think I'm going to manage that. But yeah, so basically Sulu's Kirk and Spock have gone into the antique store. Sulu's staying there with the others. They've just put some, but this little Japanese kid comes up and starts talking to him in Japanese. And we do get like Sulu's summary with each line. That's basically, this kid just ran up to him saying, "Oh, hi, Uncle Hikaru. How are you? I didn't expect to see you here." And it's like, "I'm not your uncle. I'm sorry." It's like, and Sulu's starting with him. But there's also this, to tell the little boy that he had mistaken him for someone else, Sulu had to reach into his memory for his disused Japanese, learned in the classroom and from reading novels not 300, but 1,000 years old. And the boy even makes comment about how you talk funny. It's like, yeah, I know. But he eventually, does get the kid to run off. And he then calls out and asks, "Who are you?" Sulu Akira Desu, little boy said before leaving. And this gets Sulu, well, to say something to him, but also to laugh a little bit. And McCoy comes up and asks him, "Who was that?" "That, doctor, was my great-great-great-grandfather." And what Sulu had told him was just that you can live a long life. Long and happy life. Something like that. Yeah, a long and happy life. Okay. Which I have to ask this because I don't know. I am genuinely curious, and this would be the second time I'm aware of in Star Trek that they indicate that despite multiple generations, you still have somebody look very much like an ancestor. Because here the child confused Sulu, who's ultimately his great-great-great-great-great-great-grandson. Sorry, threw an extra grade in there. With his uncle, which would actually be 4 greats, then not 3, separating Sulu and this uncle. Well, this uncle who's still named Hikaru, by the way. Because the boy does refer to him as Hikaru. So there's that, and it's like, looks very similar. But also in the Neutral Zone, I think that's the name of it, Season 1 finale of TNG, they find people who had been frozen at their death with the hope that in the future they could be thawed and whatever caused their death, like a cancer or whatever, could be cured. They awakened them, and one of them is a woman who comments that she wouldn't have done this, but it sounds like something her husband would do. And eventually, because they go through the Enterprise computers, they find any relatives, and they actually do show a family tree, and it goes all the way down to a living descendant of hers that she looks at and says that despite this being her grandson, however many times removed, that he looks exactly like her husband had. And it's just, is that an actual thing? I'm not sure. I mean, in my family, we all look like my dad. It's like, that's not surprising, though. He's my dad. But I don't know if you could go back technically a few centuries, but it's like so many generations and find anyone that would look like me, or me look like them. I'm not sure if that's accurate. So I'm just, is that an actual thing? I just, I don't know. Um, and to be clear, I'm talking not about certain features. I mean close enough for a child to confuse Sulu, and also for in that TNG episode, a wife to see her husband in this grandson so many times removed. So yeah. All right. So the encounter with the antique shop owner is quite a bit different. Not. It doesn't need to be different. It really doesn't need to be. I was just trying to think, what's the best way to put it? It technically is filler. I don't want to say that with any negative connotation, though, but it is technically filler. It's also $200 instead of $100, but anyway. Is that a lot? Jim Kirk asked. He looked at Jim askance, the shop owner. I think it's a fair price, he said defensively. But if you don't like it, he offered Jim the glasses back. My companion did not mean to impugn your fairness, Spock said. He has been out of the area for some time, and I am only visiting. I am not familiar with prices, or with your current word usage. What is a buck? A buck is $1. You know what $1 is? Neither Spock nor Kirk replied. The main unit of currency of the good old U.S. of A. You can buy most of a gallon of gas with it? Ah, the good old days. This week, anyway. Yeah. Or most of a loaf of decent bread, or beer if you choose your bar right. Either you guys have been gone forever, or do we even meet in the 60s? I think not. But yeah, so he's like, okay, these two are kind of weird, but once it's like, no, we genuinely didn't know that we're not sure if that is a fair price. Like, well, yeah, I think it's a fair price. Do you want to do it? It's like, yeah, okay. And there's also the, all right, I'll write you a check. Do you have ID or anything like that? And it's just like, nope, we don't have ID. Do you have a sales slip or something to prove you own these and you didn't steal them? No. Spock again saves the day. With perfect serenity, Spock said, I've lost mine as well, because Kirk says he doesn't have his ID, and how about you? Nope, I've lost mine as well. Our transportation lost our luggage. Thus we find ourselves in our present difficulty. Then it's like, why didn't you say so? Man, yeah, I'll help you out here. I mean, it's, sure, it turns out you're lying to me. Yeah, and the police or the feds come after. I do not have to deal with the feds if these things are stolen. I really don't have to do it. It's not worth it. But here, I'll get you some cash, no problem. And it's also odd because he goes, like, in the movie, it seemed to just be this older guy who looked fitting for an antique shop as far as, like, the old guy who he knows his stuff. He cares about this stuff. Whereas this, it's like, this seems more like a guy who grew up in the 60s. That's the simplest way to put it. And that kind of vibe from him versus just old guy who runs antique shop. Yeah, those glasses better not be stolen, man. Because I don't want any trouble with the cops, or the narcs, or the feds. The feds are the worst, man. I don't want anything more to do with the feds ever again. So if you're screwing me around and you're really a couple high-class cokeheads ripping off your rich friends for your next score, it'll go on your karma. You got that? The dude, the actor in the Voyage Home movie, I could not see that line being delivered by him. It would seem out of character for his physical appearance, and I think that works nicely. Excuse me. So yeah, they then go out to break up the group into the teams and give out the money. But we do have this. We were about to send out the cavalry, McCoy said. The cavalry, even in its mechanized form, ended some decades ago, Dr. McCoy, Spock said. It's like, okay. this is technically set present day. We definitely had mechanical cavalry still. Best known example would be tanks, but I could believe that the lighter vehicles are also counted as cavalry. The fact that it's in its mechanized form, it's like, no, that still definitely existed at the time. It still exists today. So yeah, I do not know why you would have that comment from Spock, because it is simply wrong. In fact, because it's also, I'm pretty sure that we still use I'm just like, we still have cavalry rendered regiments. I mean, true, it's by name, but it's the armored kind, it's the mechanized kind of cavalry, but we still use that in America, at least for the designation. So I mean, I do not know why this line is in here, because it is simply wrong. Spock shouldn't have it wrong, especially not for decades. It's like, no, that's not true. And it just, yeah, it stands out so weirdly. Anyway, he's divvying up the money, gives it to people, and Kirk considers, it's like, well, should I be giving it to people based on their rank? But it's like, no, because that would mean I have to give it to either McCoy or Scott, which, by the way, that would indicate, because Scotty is stated as being commander, or at least he has been at sometimes, that McCoy is also. McCoy's rank is like never really talked about, but it's also kind of irrelevant. He is just the chief medical officer, so he has the power that goes with that. But anyway, in all the years Jim had known Scott, the engineer had never had an iota of sense about money. So, despite it being, damn, they're still using money, it's like, but you use it too, because you've seen Scotty be confused by it and not use it properly. Which there's also part of me that makes me wonder about that a little bit, because I would expect him to actually be decent with money because of resources. Like, he wants to be able to buy, he wants to be able to acquire things to do engineering stuff with. So he should have a sense of its value. I could see him not properly prioritizing money, or that he could get taken easily. That I could see. But I don't know, the idea that he doesn't understand it, I don't, not having a good sense of it, like, I'm not quite happy with that, but it's not unreasonable, it's just, yeah. Okay. This is a silly thing. So, Scotty, Bones, and Sulu are in charge of getting the tank. And it's like, alright, well, and we got the whole, well, how do you do it? Well, I'd use transparent aluminum, but that's not around yet. Which is odd, because I thought that it was said earlier that, oh yeah, I can just make it out of, parts available from time. So it's like, then why are you bothering with transparent aluminum if you can use something else? I'm saying, and he already has in mind that, yes, I can do with the materials of the day. So actually, that I should add to this. Okay, I'm just going to pause it quickly to write this note in. I mean, just that is actually fairly significant. It's like, oh yeah, I can make it out of materials of the day. By the way, I'm going to use a material not of the day. I'm going to have to teach you to make it. Those are wildly different, and yeah. But anyway, they see the yellow pages, and it isn't just a let your fingers do the walking for you. Is that the tagline? Let me just make sure. Oh no, it's can't find it. Try the yellow pages. Sorry. Yeah, let your fingers do the walking. That may have come about later. But anyway, it doesn't just end with them seeing that. It's like, oh, they're gonna find a phone book and check that. No, they are like, what's the yellow pages? All right. one of us has to ask somebody because we don't know, because it's an ad, and what it's just talking about makes it clear that people are just supposed to know. So who of us looks the most like we're from out of town? None of them do, really, but Bones is like, Scotty, you should do it. Because of your accent. People will believe you're out of town. It's like, accent? You can't be saying that I speak with an accent. Scotty is not supposed to be that stupid. He should be well aware he has an accent. Not only that, at least TOS, in the actual TV series version of Scotty, I could believe he modulates it to mess with people. That there could be times when it's like, well, also just when he's angry, I can believe that he's going to speak with it more so, but there'd be times when he wants to have a little bit of fun with somebody, so he cranks it up a little bit so it's harder for them to understand. I could absolutely see him doing that. And this is like, how dare you say I have an accent? It's like, you do, man, you do, and you know. But McCoy let his protest trail off. Everybody here does. So in relation, you'll sound like you're from out of town. It's that, or I'll have to do my Centaurian imitation. Never mind, Scott said. If I'm elected, I'm elected. Strained his uniform jacket, glanced around, and left their group to speak to a pedestrian. This goes badly. First guy's like, not dealing with panhandlers. Another does just completely ignore him. But then he encounters a con artist. But Scotty is both so innocent and kind of stupid at what's going on here that nothing really happens there. The con is this woman pretends to drop a wallet. Which I don't understand the full dynamics of this, but for what's described there, she drops it. And he's like, oh, you dropped this. It's like, oh, look at that wallet you just found. I wonder who it belongs to. We should really open up to see if there's an ID in there. It's like, and this guy is basically just, you know better than me. I mean, but it's like, here's your wallet. Okay, you know better than me. It's like, oh, look, there must be like $1,000 in here. We should really take that to the police or something. It's like, you'd know better than me. And it's just kind of like, you know better than me. But he eventually gets to... okay, so yeah, it's all I have highlighted there is just a little bit there. Is her basically saying that, yeah, we should turn it in, or that, we should just split this. But, we should, both put stake into this. It's like, huh? I think what the con is trying to be is basically, well, obviously attacking somebody's greed. That's how a lot of cons work. But, be like, yeah, we'll split it. But here, why don't we both put our money in and then divide it up just evenly? So, like that. But it's like, so then the idea is, like, if these are bad bills, you make sure that the mark gets bad bills, counterfeit bills, and then you get the money. It's like, okay. Huh? I mean, it could even... I could also see being you do that, when instead you just let the person take the money, and then you report them as though they stole it, and then you get the money back to the police, and hopefully it's just, you go separate ways. But it is just odd. But it is... He is so innocent, and... What does he end up actually saying? I'm sure you know better than me. In the meantime, could you tell me what the term Yellow Pages means? Look, if we turn this into police, it'll disappear. If nobody claims it, we won't get any of the money. So what do you say we split? What did you say? And then it's like, do they not have phone books in Scotland? It's like, no, it's computerized. Oh, by the way, that reminds me. How does Spock lie about the luggage being destroyed? He's like, well, when the Enterprise burned up, I did, in fact, lose all my possessions, so it is true, sort of. It's not their current transportation, but there's also... I mean, is that even accurate? Because, I mean, technically, I would think that one of the first things to happen when the Enterprise docked was his quarters and Peter's quarters and anyone else who died, because there were more than just the two, that their belongings would have been removed from the Enterprise and secured. And I could imagine that would have been done very rapidly, because you do not want any of that stuff being stolen. Like, that's a huge, huge problem. That I could believe that they would be very strict. Starfleet would be very strict. Like, getting that stuff collected, getting it secured, and even, like, crap, why can't I think of it? A manifest of what it all is. So then be like, that's turned over to Sarek, assuming that Sarek is who the belongings would go to. Where it's like, this is a list, here's all the stuff, make sure it's all there, and you sign this, you take it home. So yeah, that like, yeah, in theory, he would have his stuff. But also, to be fair, this Spock, I can believe he doesn't really have much that could not be easily replaced. Like, he's not going to have a sentimental attachment to various things. Anyway. Now we get to Chekhov and Uhura, who are having some difficulty, because the whole trying to find Alameda with the Navy base. Sure, the man said slowly. Alameda, that's up north. Take Bart. Hang on, I'm trying to remember. Isn't it Bay Area Rapid Transit? Hang on. Actually, was written out at one point. Yeah, Bay Area Rapid Transit. Okay. Nope. Oh, wait, no, maybe that is it. So I'm just... Oh, no, sorry. I was trying to spot where... Because I had to go to different pages and lost my place. Alameda, that's up north. Take Bart. There's a station over there toward Berkeley, and all the way to the end of the line, then catch a bus to Sacramento. You can't miss it. Spasiba. I'm sure I got that pronunciation wrong, but Chekhov said, thank you. Here he watched the Russian biker in the leather suit and the black woman in the paramilitary uniform head toward the BART station. He scowled after them. Then he smiled with one corner of his mouth. He entered the same phone booth they had left, picked up the receiver, wiped the mouthpiece with his pocket handkerchief, and dialed a number from memory. It took quick thinking to divert a couple of trained spies like that. He never expected anything like this to happen to him, right out on the street. He never expected to have this kind of chance. FBI, this is Gamma, Harry said. So, he's a paranoid nut, this Harry, and he thinks he just encountered a couple spies. Chekhov, because, well, he's speaking with a Russian accent. And Uhura, he's like, she must be South African. And like, he's trying to argue this with the FBI agent on the phone. That's like, well, isn't it true that the Soviets are trying to get into Africa? And so it's like, let me see if I can find the line. But he was a Russian, I tell you, and that woman with him, I bet she was from South Africa. Aren't you guys always saying the Ruskies are trying to take over Africa? Bond, which is the nickname he's given the FBI agent that happens to be on the phone at the moment. And he's called in multiple times for the FBI know who he is, so going to ignore him. Or call the people in the white jackets on him. Bond did not reply for so long that Harry wondered if he had to change the tape in the recorder. He also figures they're recording this, which, to be fair, that I would actually believe is happening at this time. They are all being recorded, but probably not somebody's there turning it on and off. But anyway, a black South African spy, Bond said. About time I got through to him, Harry thought. Yeah, had to have been. Right. Thanks very much. The line went dead. What's this next one? Oh, yeah. The dude's nuts. And this is a real thing, though. There definitely would have been people like that who constantly calling it in. Some of them would be doing that, like in his case, probably for the attention. He wants to get the notoriety, if he does find it, and verify that, yes, he's right. There would also be people that do that just to talk to somebody. It's one of those funny things where technically both can be arrested, for doing that, but definitely in the case of just somebody wanting to talk, and this happens with police stations as well, to my knowledge. And they might try to cut it off, but in some cases like that, it's like they're harmless, is technically wasting resources, but sometimes the person online is allowed to decide, you know what, I'm not being distracted. If something comes up, I hang up and I go. So that I think that they are allowed some of that. I'm not sure. I think it at least used to be the case because like Adam 12 would show them that stuff is out of actual files. Where yeah, there are people that they know who just constantly come in or constantly call in. It's just okay. If they're not too busy, it's okay, and I can believe that the FBI do that as well. Plus, you never know. Maybe the paranoid is actually seeing something for once. So you do still want having the record is fine, but it is if this is trying to take up resources, it becomes a problem, and then they might arrest somebody. But anyway, he's then freaking out because he's like, maybe the spies left something in here. So he's looking around. It's like, he's a quarter. They may have left this here. Wait, they may have left this here. They may have poisoned it. He then decides they might not be alone. They might be following me. I can't go home now. I know what I'll do. I'll follow them. But he was too smart to let them trick him into leading them right to his home. He would follow the first pair of spies instead. That would fool the ones following him all right if he led them to their cohorts and let them run into each other. Maybe Bond and his group could scoop them all up at once. He headed for the BART station. Now Uhura, they get on the train and like, wait a minute. According to the map here, we're going in the wrong direction. Wonder why that guy steered us wrong. And Chekhov's like, maybe he's from out of town too and just didn't want to, let us know he didn't know. Okay. So they decided to get off at the next stop, get on the right train, and go the other way. Because, yeah, it's like, he told us to go north and east. Alameda's south and west. Actually, no, it's when they get on the other side of the bay. That's when they change and go in the right direction. But then they also, her spots Harry, Gamma. Some of it is also, they want to be, it is the whole notoriety thing, but it is some people, they start having these fantasies and they want to live them out. And it is, for a lot of them, it's harmless. But there are also some who know it could be a problem. But anyway, as very much an aside, the original Secret Life of Walter Mitty with Danny Kaye, good movie. Anyhow, so because the dude was following them, but they get on a southbound train, and when her finally sits down and looks over, she actually sees him in the northbound train, and when like their eyes lock and they see each other, the dude like scrambles to and like gets up as though to chase after it, but it's like it's weirdly written. Well, here, because it is right at the end. The man who had sent them in the wrong direction sat in the northbound car, so they're in the southbound. Someone sat down next to him. He shifted closer to the window and looked away. His gaze locked with hers. As her train pulled out going south and his train pulled out going north, he jumped up and started after her with an expression of shock and anger. Why would he get up and start after her? They're on different trains going in opposite directions. He can't get to them. I do not understand that. It makes no sense. Yeah, I'm that the do they know money? Do they not know money? Confusion there. The transparent balloon thing. It's I don't know. I don't know what I can say besides I am concerned about the trend. That this is not, maybe that makes a little bit of sense. But yeah, this is not trending in a good direction for me thinking that this is going to be a good book, which sucks a lot. Because, oh my god, Wrath of Khan was so good. But what just occurred to me, and that was why that may explain it, what was it in Wrath of Khan, and also in Search for Spock that I really liked? Wrath of Khan with Saavik, it was just much clearer there. It was the time that Vonda would spend in some cases, just in their heads, giving us history, giving us backstory on these characters, fleshing them out. Maybe that's just where her strength really lies. Whereas here, we already know all these characters. We know their backgrounds. There can be some details here and there. But there's nothing... We don't have a new character to flesh out here, so they just have to be doing things. Maybe that's actually a weakness for her. It's possible. It is possible, because I know that for me, one thing, although I feel like in some stories it's not always evident, I am typically decent. I would say I'm better at conversation than I am at other things. I am at describing specific actions and movements. And it's just maybe, so if I have a situation where I have to talk about a lot of actions and movements, not have a conversation going, might not be so good. I think I actually do have some exceptions to that, like the 40s and 50s in the Joe Money Gifts. We've got fights going on in both those, full-on battles. That I think it does work out, but even though it's not conversation, still is going well. But I think I technically have the advantage there of it is a conversation. It's just, with punches. So maybe that's probably the reason why that worked out. Also in both, the 50s, I had that was part of the original idea to that story. The battle in the 50s was going to happen. I knew that before I wrote one word. And the battles in the 40s, I thought out a lot of them before getting to that chapter. Getting to the chapter that they're specifically in, but not nearly as far ahead as 50s. But it still is. When I got there, I did have the images in mind, and it flowed nicely, so it did work out. But A Letter from Catherine, if you read that, a lot of the time when you're in like the background, the history stuff for Roman, it's more him like just narrating it as though you've just gotten in his head, or you're just there invisible and he's telling you this. So it is leaning on that conversation skill that I think I have. Maybe I'm wrong. Somebody else can tell me that. But it's just saying he's doing this, he's doing this, he's doing this. I did this. This is why. This is it was fun you doing this. It's more personable. So, but yeah, it could just be maybe this is not a story that will lend to that. I am assuming that what is a strength for her, and that these other things are weaknesses, and that's where she's forced to be now. But it still is. Why would an editor not catch some of these and be like, "Hey, Vonda, you have these inconsistencies here. We should try to clean those up, shouldn't we?" Because it's also like, for me, I'm a writer. I don't know if I edit my own stuff. I don't know if I'm necessarily would be considered a good editor or not. I don't know. I don't think in terms of that. I think in terms of, am I a good writer or not? But it's like I'm spotting these issues, and these are not. I would not consider these small issues. So, yeah. Just quickly looking. Oh yeah, that is also true. So we do get the whole Kirk and Spock don't know what exact change is and all that. We had the tank crew not knowing what the yellow pages were, yet her and Chekhov have neither problem with finding the yellow pages and using them. They were in the phone booth looking at that stuff. And also no apparent issue with exact change for the BART. For traveling on BART. So either we could assume that they also encountered and asked people for help, even though it's not described, or what I said about her is actually true. I didn't really think about it much until now. Chekhov, I don't think would. Maybe Chekhov would understand a phone booth, but I doubt the money thing because of his line about how basically, no, so you never used money. It's like, yeah, it did. Yeah, it did both. Sorry, yeah, it did. I just realized I was really quiet there. Might not have gotten picked up. But, no, with her, it's very reasonable to me that Uhura is one of the more intelligent and literate people of the crew. Yeah, and not in a Mary Sue kind of way, not in a girl boss kind of way, just it connects into her vocation. With communications and languages and such. Well, more so communications. The languages stuff you don't really get until Star Trek 2009, which is silly. But it makes sense. And I guess another way to put it is of the main crew, it makes sense that she would be the most cultured of them as well. That just how Nichelle Nichols played the character, how the character was presented, makes perfect sense. So her understanding all that makes actually plenty of sense to me. But how she's not a Mary Sue, how she's not a girl boss, she's not a boss. Kirk is. Kirk has the talent to command. I can't recall a time that we truly see that from her. Yeah, I mean, it's one thing if she's bossing around a lieutenant, but she doesn't necessarily have the character to be a captain, to make the decisions like on that level. At least I can't recall any example where she does. So, where she demonstrates that. So, but yeah, her being more cultured than the rest of them, no, I can absolutely believe that. Kirk only came to antiques later in life, so he wouldn't necessarily know. Spock should also know some of this stuff, I would think, but I mean that would depend. That would depend. So yeah. All right. I mean, it would depend on what was considered important, what knowledge was prioritized for Spock, just to clarify that. But and then so, yeah, technically Chekhov would also know a lot, but what he knows is false. So yeah. Anyway, next chapter will be interesting. I'm going to assume because it did seem like the next chapter did start with Kirk and Spock figured out how to get the money they needed for exact change and make it to the Institute. And so, yeah, we're going to probably meet Jillian, meet George and Gracie. Not sure what else we may end up meeting. Like, will we get Scotty and Bones at the acrylic factory? So, yeah. See you next time.